Good morning, good day, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Cyber Foundation Fridays. However, it is Monday, so welcome to Cyber Foundation Monday today, and happy Veterans Day to everyone that served in any military around the world. I know this is a U.S. holiday, but in a day for U.S. recognition of U.S. military. But I know there are a lot of probably my followers that have served military around the world. So thank you for your service to your country. I really, we all appreciate it, and I just wanted to recognize that here on a United States Veterans Day. Uh, Today, we are going to hit on another risk management topic, and we're going to talk briefly today about risk analysis and treatment. And we went through that a little bit already in some other sessions around risk strategy and around risk management process and the risk management framework. So we're just going to hit on a few topics here today and some ways that we analyze our risk and look to align those to our business strategy and goals as well. So, I keep doing that. I hit the wrong button in the wrong screen, and I hit the wrong button there. So, for those of you attending one of these for the first time, my name is Dwayne Natwick. I am the CEO, owner, and principal training lead for Captain Hyperscaler, a training organization. We're APMG accredited for OSACA training. We're also an Accolade training provider, CompTIA, Microsoft, EC Council, as well as others working right now actually to also be on Pearson Views list, which is going to add to our origin story aspect of our hero sagas. So I'm certified in multiple ISC2, OSACA, Accolade, Azure, AWS, CompTIA, as well as many others. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and an AWS community builder. Feel free. I'm going to fix that slide. I keep finding these little Easter eggs where I forgot to put the S on my LinkedIn link, LinkedIn profile link. Feel free to catch up with me on any of these platforms. Also, you can also use add this one in as well. I think it's bsky.social, if I remember right. Let me check that real quick. What my profile is for Blue Sky. Yes, that's correct. So if I'm a lot of people over the weekend seem to be moving to Blue Sky. I've had a Blue Sky profile for a while, but haven't used it actively. I'm going to probably do that a little bit more here in the near future, as well as posting a lot of my updates and things like that, because my social post software does allow Blue Sky to funnel into that. So I'm going to continue to do that as well. So feel free to connect on any of those. Follow me on any of those platforms, or connect with me on LinkedIn, or as well as Captain Hyperscaler does have a LinkedIn page as well as a website. So you can see on Captain Hyperscaler any updates in terms of events that we have happening, webinars, and go to captainhyperscaler.com, and our training catalog is available there as well. We have some courses coming up, OSACA C-Risk course in December, and doing the full Accolade portfolio, current portfolio in January as well, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So we are in November 11th here today, which was moved from Friday, November 8th, on risk strategy and governance. We have one more Foundation Friday this Friday, talking about AI risk and ethics, which will close out our Cyber Foundation Friday events for the year. I may continue and start these back up in January, but definitely going to take some time off with with the holiday season with Thanksgiving in the U.S. coming up in a few weeks, as well as Christmas and all of those December holidays happening as well, and New Year's and people taking vacation and holidays off. That it does not make sense for me to be doing these webinars every Friday, and so we'll re-kick these off probably in January for the upcoming year. I'll come up with some new topics and things that we can talk about. Maybe some more around cloud and cloud security and all of those things. But like I said, one more this coming Friday. So since it is Monday, we've got actually a short week between the sessions. One today and one on Friday. So as I was saying, we do have some Accolade training coming up in January. Like I said, the week of December 16th, I will be doing an Osaka C-Risk, which is the risk and compliance course from Osaka. So if anybody's interested in that course, please reach out to me on social media. Like I said, on LinkedIn would be the best to message me. And same thing with the Accolade training. So I'm going to do these. If you do look at the calendar, you'll see I'm going to do the AI security and the cyber resilience and the risk management. I'm going to do the foundation and the practitioner all as 1 week. So if you want to take both of those courses, you can take them as a 5-day, still with the 3-hour session aspect of the training. So with the exception of the cyber, the risk management and the AI security, I'm actually going to do those a little bit longer. I'm going to do those as 4-hour sessions, but still starting at 8:00 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time or 1 p.m. UTC each day. So you can do the AI, the cyber resilience is actually going to be in the afternoon, so it would be evening in the European time zone. I'm going to start those at I believe I have those set at 1 to 3, 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 on the 6th to the 8th. So or the 6th to the 10th if we go the full week. I'm offering those courses at $300 per seat per class, which includes the exam voucher. So whether if you want to take the foundation or the practitioner only, it's $300. If you do both the foundation and the practitioner, the entire path for the Accolade, to the 2 certifications from Accolade, I will give you $100 discount on that. So again, feel free to reach out. I'll be promoting these on social media as well. So feel free to reach out and register for the course. So we're going to talk about a few things here today, real quick, just some things around risk and risk tolerance and various common threats and vulnerabilities as we go through, and what those are, and really how do we assess those risks, and how do we make sure that those risks are properly handled based on our organization and our business. And we're going to go through these rather quick. Again, if you're interested in this topic a little bit more, we do cover this topic in the Risk Management Foundations course and talk about it in greater detail. So let's talk about some of those impacts and those threats. And when we think about the threats, we need to think about kind of where the source of that threat is, what the event is to that threat, and then where our vulnerability is, what's going to be exploited, and what that adverse impact is. And that becomes then that adverse impact, and the impact and likelihood becomes our organizational risk. And if we're going to be successful as risk practitioners and build a ability to frame and build a business case for a mitigation of risk, we need to make sure that we are properly addressing all of those things, and addressing those aspects of risk based on the organizational's requirements and what the organizational needs are. So those become paramount to how we handle risk and how we look at risk within our organization. And so we need to understand the various risks that we have. We have hostile risks. There's malware. There's advanced persistent threats. There's ransomware. There's distributed denial service. There's also various, like, unauthorized access attacks, which are usually the source in a lot of cases, or root cause to bringing in many of the other threats. The indicator of compromise is somebody accessing that is not authorized to access. Then they are able to do these other bad things. We have a lot of other aspects and a lot of ways that sometimes the unauthorized access takes place is in some kind of human error. Maybe we click on a link, we disclose sensitive information on a phishing attack or a vishing attack or a smishing attack. Having poor password management, ineffective use of multi-factor authentication. I was in an event on Friday or Thursday last week that there was a gentleman doing a presentation that was very interesting around multi-factor authentication and ineffective use of multi-factor authentication. He was was stating that the whole 90% or 99% of attacks of access control attacks are thwarted by multi-factor authentication, but that's a bit of a misconception because the attackers have become much better at using social engineering to invalidate multi-factor authentication. So you got to be really diligent in the use of multi-factor authentication, and make sure that even if somebody does call you and seems legitimate, you don't ever give away your MFA one-time passcode to anybody. Accidental data deletion obviously is a big one. So making sure you have soft delete in place wherever you can. Big misconfiguration of systems, misconfiguration from a developer standpoint. And I have a whole course on that if you're interested, around developer security. We talk about it a lot in the risk practitioner course as well, if you're interested in the risk management practitioner. Environmental, national disasters, very much physical types of risk that we need to identify. Supply chain's a very big one as well. Counterfeit software. If we're using open source, having insecure integrations, bad unauthorized products and things like that. Poor manufacturing, if we're thinking about it from a physical risk standpoint, are all things that we need to consider. And it's a very key aspect to not just how we protect ourselves and mitigate risks, but how we understand who's supporting us, what they go through in terms of their due care and due diligence, are all aspects of things that we need to consider. Internal organizational risks, again, espionage, malicious employees, theft of physical devices. Social engineering is in here, in internal organization risks. That could go back to human error to some degree as well. But some things to state around this, and malicious employees. And we'll talk about on Friday in the AI risks and ethics discussion. We'll talk about responsible AI and responsible aspects of risk, and how risk is handled, and how we adjust for potential ethical violation, ethical misuses and things like that. But we can do our due diligence and our due care on the hiring of our employees and the people that work for our organization and our supply chain and who does business with our organization. But people, most of us are ethical people, but there are certain situations where somebody could get themselves into a bad position where they do things that are not ethical. And so we need to be diligent as an organization about that and about the behaviors of our employees. Is there a morale situation? Is there something that's happened within our organization? Did our organization just do a sweeping salary cut? That has put some of our employees in financial distress. That could be indicators of compromise, essentially, for insider threats. And so we need to do our diligence around that and just understand, again, constantly monitoring behavior, not from a big brother perspective, but more so just to make sure that no anomalies are taking place, or is going to be very important. So, technical risk, software bugs or flaws, lack of hardware-based security features. If we're using, again, open source software, could be a technical risk for outdated, unsupported software. Insecure protocols, infrastructure. All those things are aspects of risk that we need to think about. Political, legal, regulatory. When we talk about organizational risks and organizational objectives and policies and all of that and standards, we usually talk about that from our own internal bubble, our own internal organization. But outside of that, we obviously have those influencers out there that might be political, certainly legal, and possibly regulatory. So we need to make sure that we are addressing those potential risks as well. The potential risks, again, of our third party and our supply chain and things like that all come into play. One of those soft risks, it may not have a impact that we can quantify, but we can certainly understand that if we have a breach, we may have a reputational and public perception or customer perception that is going to impact our organization if we have some level of breach. Third party outsourcing risks, if we're using different software, what's our dependencies on those suppliers. Operational technology, industrial control systems. There's a lot more of this out there than there may have been in the past. We have just like our own connected devices and our Amazon or Google Nest devices that we have in our house. Those are our IoT devices, but similar to a lot of operational technology where they're firmware based rather than operating system based, and have potential flaws, potential firmware risks in place that we need to understand. Generally, doing some level of segmentation is going to help us from that standpoint. So let's kind of take that now that we've identified those risks and take those into what we would think about in terms of risk responses and how we would analyze this. And again, the key thing around analyzing our risk is we are looking at the impact and likelihood. We've identified the risk. What's the impact? What's the likelihood of it happening to our organization, and what's the impact it's going to have if that threat is realized? And so one of the key things that we do in terms of understanding the continuity of operations or the business continuity of our organization is doing a business impact analysis. What is the effect going to be on our critical systems to do business? That's the biggest impact that it's going to be, and where we should look at first when we're doing a analysis of risk. So doing this business impact analysis is very key. Does that risk impact our critical systems? And if it does, then it should be prioritized. And that's a key piece to that. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can do that and things that we've got to understand. When we're thinking about business continuity and business impact analysis, we're doing business continuity plans or continuity of operations planning. Being continuity of operations planning being kind of the high watermark, which goes then into business continuity planning, which is a little bit more tactical. And then disaster recovery planning is certainly much more tactical and generally much more technical as well. And we talk about recovery time objectives. How long does it take for the business to be restored and operating? Maybe not to production level, but at least we can transactionally do business. Recovery point objective, acceptable amount of data loss. The maximum tolerable downtime then goes from where we are from the consequence to when it's going to really start to cause problems in our reputational, our operational aspect. So it goes beyond that recovery time objective. That maximum tolerable downtime is a little bit longer because we want to get back into production, and that builds into that work recovery time. Then is how long it takes to get everybody back into operations, do regular operations, and then that's gives us the mean time to recover. So if we're looking at the recovery time objective, the mean time to recover, and the work recovery time, that gives us our total mean time to recover, which takes us back to our ability, which is our ability to recover from that incident. And when we talk about recover, this is back to full functionality. This is back to production. So it's not our disaster recovery. We have our disaster recovery where we're now in some level of recovery state. We are doing business, but we're not doing business to the extent that that we would in production. Mean time to recover gets us back into production, full recovery. And then the mean time between failures. And when we look at assessing risk, we look at the single loss expectancy, but we also look at the annual rate of occurrence, which the mean time between failures could be that. Generally, when you look at like hardware, when you look at like switch equipment and things like that, like a Cisco switch or Palo Alto switch is going to give you a mean time between failure number. Single point of failure, when we talk about risk and we talk about handling risk, one of the things around handling risk is building up resilience and high availability, not having a single point of failure. But if we have a particular system in play that is going to potentially, maybe it's a critical system, but it is out of date, it is irreplaceable, and it is only a single system, and that system fails, that is a single point of failure location. We need to make sure that we minimize, if not eliminate, single point of failures within our organization. Mission essential functions, obviously, this isn't just our critical systems, which we'll talk about here on the next slide, but these are the key activities and processes. When we do a business continuity plan, we look at those people that are key, not just the systems, but the people that are key to all the operations and fulfill what we need to do as an organization. The critical systems then are systems that are going to have a significant impact. What are the systems that we need and are necessary to do our day-to-day business? Service level agreements, again, contract between providers. So these are key things that we need to understand. What is our supply chain, and how do they fall into those critical systems and the mission essential functions as well? Financial analysis now. Once we know all of that, then we can start looking at things like total cost of ownership. What is the overall cost associated? What's our return on investment? How do we assess the profitability of business? And this is really key when we're looking at our risks, and we're looking at analyzing our risks and building our justification to the business of why we need to mitigate this risk or put a control in place, is looking at these returns on assets, net present value. These are a lot of financial based aspects of things, but the key one here is a cost benefit analysis. When we are looking at a control and we are analyzing a control to mitigate the impact of a potential risk, we need to do a cost benefit. We need to compare what the costs are going to be to that. What's the total cost of ownership of that control versus the total cost of ownership of the asset and the risk. So, and what's the payback period? What is the amount of time to recover that investment? So, a lot of times when we're talking about cyber resilience, we're going to look at a 3-year time frame and see if it's justified over 3 year costs. It includes the operating cost of that mitigation control and all those things as well. So, what are some of the constraints and some of the things that we want to think about financially? We have SOC 1, we have various legal constraints like GDPR, the various protection and privacy constraints. We have various regulatory, like industry standard constraints, regulatory, contractual, governance structure we may have. You know, depending on, if we're in financial, we have we have PCI DSS, we have ISO, potentially SOC. If we're running our own data center, those are all things that we need to consider. So those are all, those external factors that we need to look at and we need to consider as we align our prioritization of our risk. And a key aspect to all of this is our risk tolerance. So our risk tolerance level, and I'm not talking about our risk appetite. The risk tolerance is based a lot on what we've set forth as our organizational culture, what our ability is to function when a risk is realized. What is our level of it becoming an adverse effect that we cannot recover from. That, if it goes above that risk tolerance, we could be in jeopardy from a business perspective. Now, and this is different based on each of the risks that we're evaluating, and based on the organization's perspective and culture and influence from the leaders, it could be different. And we need to make sure, as a risk management practitioner, that we are aligned with that and understand that. Also, what goes into a lot of that is the risk appetite. So the risk tolerance is financially what we can handle, or what we can handle as an organization as a whole. But the leaders and executives might have also a different risk appetite. Their risk appetite may be a lower threshold than the risk tolerance of the organization. So we need to think about, from a standpoint of the risk profile of the organization versus each of the department and business processes, what our culture is, what's our capacity to handle risk from a resource perspective, both financial and people aspect of things, and then we can look at other things too, like risk aggregation or risk compounding, where we can take a risk, take multiple risks and handle those risks with multiple mitigation, with the same mitigation strategy, to kind of spread the cost of handling that risk, that business impact analysis, and that ROI then gets spread across multiple risks. Risk compounding is a little bit different, where we are now. Let me just make sure. So aggregation is, I was handling that right. Different departments assess the risk, and we could handle that risk overall, handle multiple risks with one control. That's the risk aggregation. The risk compounding is one risk may make another risk worse. And so we got to understand that the impact of a particular risk, example would be a unauthorized access of a user that has global admin rights. That is going to compound our risk to our organization in various different places, and risks to our applications, risks to our data, risks to our database, risks to our systems are all going to be compounded if that particular risk is realized. So those are some things we got to think about too. Priorities and trade-offs. We need to balance our risk. Make sure we're looking at risk reduction. We're looking at control. We are making sure we are achieving proper compliance. Making sure that we have looked at short-term goals versus our long-term strategy. Maybe we've got short-term goals, we've got short-term risks. What's our long-term strategy and things like that? So a lot of compare and contrast here in terms of the tug of war when we're thinking about our organization and how we're going to handle those risks based on our risk appetite, our tolerance, and really our risk aware culture. How are our what's our stakeholder perspectives and priorities. We really got to align the entire organization when we're risk management practitioners. So that really brings us to all of that foundational aspect, brings us to the strategy of, what are we looking to accomplish, and what are we looking to handle when we are, assessing our risk, analyzing our risk, and prioritizing how we treat that risk. So we want to look at those, and we want to have an integrated risk strategy. The key is supporting the business mission, supporting the organization, and making sure that we are aligned with our stakeholders, our executives and senior leaders, and their perspective of risk as well. So various elements of the strategy: the identification of our risk, the assessment, the response, and the monitoring are all key aspects. So integrating that into the business processes, into the decision making, is how we build a risk aware culture. And you can see, one of the key things that I always state is it is the organization's the organization needs to be the advocate for handling risk and for the risk strategy within our organization. And if they advocate for that, and we align how we handle risk and that risk culture based on the mission and business of the organization, then we can execute throughout the rest of the organization. And from our standpoint, from a technical standpoint, that really has to do a lot to do with the enterprise culture and the information systems and all of that as key, but also to the stakeholders and how the stakeholders are going to maintain the culture of continuous awareness and continuous improvement. And so we will need to put those mechanisms in place, and a reporting structure and a safe structure for people to feel comfortable in reporting risk as well. So because if they're not comfortable with stating a risk or addressing a risk within an organization, then there is not going to be a culture where somebody's going to report on potential risks. There's always going to be that what's in it for me approach, but it's also what is the adverse effect to me as well if I don't report this. Not that it's going to have any hindrance on their employment per se, but it is going to could potentially, if it's a risk that compromises the organization, compromises personal identifiable information, in our HR systems, it could have an adverse effect on you as well. So making sure, with that, all the stakeholders understand what could be, the the adverse effect to them as well as the organization. If the organization ceases to exist, they're going to be looking for a job. So those are all things that we need to make sure we are addressing and bringing about. And again, we've got to align the strategic, and this is really the last slide. Like I said, short presentation today, because you can go back and get some of this from the risk strategy presentation I did 3 weeks ago, as well as the one where I started this all for risk management 6 weeks ago was with the risk management framework. And we talk a lot about this at a high level. Again, we go deeper in it in the risk management foundations and practitioner course from Accolade as well. So welcome you to take those courses. Again, they're coming up in January. I have some courses if you want to take on demand in Udemy, but I'd much prefer you come to my class and we can interact. I feel that's a much better way to learn, both you as well as myself. But the key aspect to all of this is, again, aligning the strategic risk to the tactical risk. What does the organization feel is their thoughts around risk, and maintaining a level of risk awareness to make sure that we're supporting the mission and business, and making sure that we have continuity of business, and all critical systems are in place and functioning and are not in a place of risk, or where there's a high impact, high likelihood risk in place. Um, then we can put the controls in place that are necessary. And if we think back to treatment of risks, remember there are four different types of treatment of risk. There's accepting that risk, which means it's below our risk tolerance and our risk appetite. So we are just going to accept that risk, accept that that risk is there, but that the control actually is going to be a higher level of investment than the impact and likelihood of that risk taking place. Avoidance would be where we are, maybe we're air gapping an out of date operating system, or a system that's an internal system that we have to have, but it doesn't need to be exposed to the internet. So we're avoiding that exposure. We're avoiding that risk of it being exposed to the internet by micro segmenting it. There's transferring risk, which we transfer physical risk all the time if we move to cloud technologies, or there's insurance, like cyber insurance, to protect us against financial loss. Those three don't necessarily move the needle a whole lot in terms of that risk not being there. Mitigating that risk is going to allow us to put some controls in place. We're going to put the resources, we're going to put the mitigation, the controls in place to make sure that risk is not there, or is not going to have as high of an impact. And we'll have a level of residual risk that we're going to have to accept, but there is going to be a lot more tactical nature to handling that risk as well. So those are all things that we need to think about, and how we need to understand and really adhere to the roles, and really work with our executive leaders, work with our stakeholders, work with our business process managers, and all of those to really bring forth what you need to do to handle risk. And like I said, a lot of topics we just went through really quick. As these foundational sessions are to be, there are a high level of information that I go into great detail in some of my courses in. So again, if you are interested in some of my courses, please reach out. And I'll be happy to give you information on upcoming courses. If you have a group of people within your organization that are looking for training, I will be happy to do a personal course for your organization as well. Again, this Friday will be the last of the Foundation Fridays for 2024. Like I said, we'll start these up probably again in January, or after the holidays and everything, just to continue on and continue to educate you, get you interested in managing, in security, in cloud, in AI, and in risk strategies around all of those. Those are the key aspects of what I want to do, and what I try to do in any of my discussions within my courses, is to make you more aware of the risks that are out there, and how you can build better cyber resilience, better awareness, to protecting your data, protecting your personnel, protecting those high level critical assets, are all things that you need to consider. And like I said, got some training coming up in January. This is my old slide. Go back to that first slide here. That's right. Hold on a second. Let me just scroll back here real quick. Didn't change out that particular. So just scrolling back to the beginning for everybody. There we go. Oops. And there we are. So there is the upcoming courses in January for Accolade. As stated, the week of December 16th, for 4 days, I have the the Asaka Sea Risk course as well. So feel free to reach out. A little bit more expensive than the Accolade courses, as you can figure. There's a lot more in terms of Q&A engines and prep that comes with the Asaka courses, but Accolade does a great job with practice questions and practice exams and things like that that I will share with you as part of your registration to this course as well. So again, feel free to reach out to me on social media, and until next time, which is Friday, thank you for joining this Cyber Foundation Friday / Monday for this week. And have a great day and a great week, everybody. And I will see you on the 15th to talk about AI ethics.